Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-bending concept from our source material. We're going to explore a theoretical framework that maps the physical universe and ancient scripture onto the exact same mathematical engine. It's like finding the hidden source code of reality. So, let's just jump right in.
Now, right up front, I want to be super clear. We are not doing a literal tafsir of a physics textbook here. What we're looking at is a symbolic mirror. The idea is that mathematical mechanics explain how physical structures behave, and they reveal how both physical systems and ancient texts might actually be running the exact same underlying program. It's a continuous covenant state traversal mapped onto a very specific sequence.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the universal OS, the diode of faith, the quantum state of the soul, prophets as physical states, and finally, the final traversal.
Okay, let's start with part 1, the universal OS and decoding the 237 pulse.
Think of this 237 rhythm as the fundamental heartbeat of the system, a complete cycle of state evolution. Everything kicks off with a 2. That's an initialization, a polarity split. Think of Adam and the tree. The unity isn't broken accidentally, it's split intentionally so the wave function can enter a possibility space. Then we move into the 3 buffer. This is continuous traversal. The wave propagates through time using knowledge, action, and wisdom. Next comes the second 2, which is directional filtering. This is the covenant sorting, where the system's orientation is measured and the wave collapses. And finally, if successful, it resolves into a 7, a state of stabilized illumination and perfect return.
Moving right along to section 2, the diode of faith, where we look at PN junctions and the human soul.
To ground this, let's look at something you probably have in your pocket right now, a simple electronic diode. A diode operates using the exact same structural logic as our framework. It relies on a split polarity. You have a P side, which the source material maps to a receptive, light-oriented field, and an N side, representing dense, material traversal. Where they smash together is the junction. Symbolically, this is the covenant boundary, or the original tree. And here's the crucial part. Without that polarity difference, without a tree or a boundary, absolutely no directed current can flow. A uniform field just doesn't produce movement.
Right in the middle of that junction sits what engineers call the depletion region. The source material maps this exactly to the concept of Barzakh. It's the ultimate test zone membrane of dunya, tahut, and covenant pressure. Current can't just casually stroll across. It faces a suspended boundary and has to be properly aligned. It's literally a living filtration system separating pure signal from random noise.
So what happens when energy hits this boundary? Well, if the field aligns with the signal, you get forward bias. This allows a living, alternating current to pass through the barrier, which perfectly mirrors the Qur'anic concept of taking the book with strength. But if the polarity is wrong, you get reverse bias. Energy gets trapped, the depletion region widens, and the entire system freezes into a direct current offset. The outward physical structure remains completely intact, but the inward spiritual traversal completely stops. The text calls this frozen shadow state the Pharaoh state.
All right, let's level up a bit. Section 3, the quantum state of the soul and Schrödinger's Covenant.
This is where things get really fascinating. When you place the famous Schrödinger equation next to Qur'anic topology, the parallels are wild. The equation perfectly describes state evolution, mirroring reader state motion. The wave function, psi, becomes the human soul, the Nafs, traversing the covenant wave. That little imaginary number I, that's the unseen rotation, the Barzakh flip factor. Planck's constant, h bar, represents the quantized decree, the qadr pulse. The partial derivative of time is the recursion of night and day. And h hat, the Hamiltonian operator, is the governing command field, the Rabb-topology that oversees the whole thing.
And just as a quantum wave eventually collapses into a single reality, this framework views that wave collapse as covenant sorting. Remember the second 2 in our pulse? That's what this is. But here's the twist. The observer collapsing the wave isn't human consciousness. The observer field is a law's command. The collapse is entirely ethical relational. And when that wave finally collapses into a stable eigenstate, you've reached the 7, that resolved stabilization known as sakinah.
Which brings us to section 4, prophets as physical states, or characters in the topology.
Under this framework, we aren't just looking at historical figures, we are looking at pure physical vectors. Musa acts as the probing current entering a dense field. Pharaoh, as we mentioned, is the frozen DC observation state. Adam is the initial symmetry split. Yahya is the pure eigenvector, representing a stable grip. The cave sleepers? They are suspended barrier state. And the reader, meaning you, right now, is the local execution node actively traversing the field today.
And because it's the same equation running underneath, identical forms can diverge completely based on their command state. Take Ibrahim's fire. It's a massive thermal field that normally destroys, but it spares him through breakdown inversion. The physics are command overridden, and the structure is preserved. Compare that to Samri's golden cow. It's pure noise, a false waveform that creates a reverse bias and completely blocks the true signal. Same universal equation, totally different command state outputs.
The implications here are just staggering. It means the stories of the Ark, the sleepers in the cave, Solomon's kingdom, and even modern civilization, they are all recursive. They are self-referential mathematical outputs, standing wave solutions of the exact same covenant equation, just resolving at different amplitudes. This perfectly aligns with the text's own claims of being a structure of diversified patterns and repeated examples.
Finally, Section 5, the final traversal and generating power.
So, let's bring it back to you. If you are a localized execution node traversing this massive quantum field of history and physics, how do you actually operate? More specifically, how does a soul generate power?
The framework answers this with one last beautiful engineering metaphor, the solar panel topology. How does a solar panel work? First, a photon strikes the junction. This is like receiving an ayah, or a sign of light. Second, that impact causes charge separation, awakening hidden carriers inside the panel. This is spiritual discernment, or furqan. Finally, that separation generates a directed, living current. It transforms incoming truth into actual, usable power, physical action or amal, light upon light.
Here's the bottom line. You cannot bypass the trial. It's impossible. The depletion region, the barrier, the initial polarity split, they are mathematically required to awaken those hidden carriers and produce flow. Without the intense pressure of the junction, there's no expanded chest, no living traversal, and absolutely no generated power.
No matter how incredibly complex the variables get while you're navigating the 3 buffer of life, this universal mathematical compression dictates the final outcome. The system goes through a symmetry split, it expands under the intense trial of the junction, it gets filtered by its orientation, and mathematically, inevitably, it must resolve back into perfect unity.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question about your own place within this 2-3-7 matrix. If the physical universe and the human soul are truly running the exact same code, what state are you in? Are you frozen in a shadow state, trapped in a reverse bias DC loop where the outward form is there but the inward movement has stopped? Or are you a living AC current, actively traversing the boundary and generating power toward the light? It's an incredible way to view the world, isn't it? Thanks for joining me today, and keep exploring.